Welcome back, McFly subscribers. So today we will be tying the bead head pheasant tail, a classic pattern that works very well in almost all rivers. So I plan on discussing this fly and its applications later in the video, but in case you haven't seen this channel before, this is McFly Angler.
Starts now.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started tying. Place your hook and bead securely in your vise. For a hook, I will be using Resin's barbless 9231 because it's a 2x long hook, which gives more room for the bead. And today I'm tying in size 14. And for the bead, I'm using Resin's brass bead in gold and size 2.8mm. We will also need some .015 size lead wire, and I find it handy to put the spool in a bobbin holder. Okay, let's add 5 lead wraps to the hook shank by winding it on as you would thread. Lead is soft enough to just break off with your fingernail. Okay, make sure it's tight onto the hook and each wrap is touching the next. Then push it up into the bead cavity. This will do 2 things. Of course, add more weight to the fly, but also stabilize that bead. Okay, for the thread, I'm using Viva's 6/0 in brown. Start your thread right behind the lead wraps and snip or snap off the waste. Then make a few wraps up over the lead wraps. Then bring your thread down the hook shank to about the halfway mark. Now we need some wire. For this size fly, this UTC Ultra Wire in brassy size works great, and I like using gold. Pull off 2 to 3 turns of wire, which will tie 3 to 5 of these flies. And it's easy to break it off the spool with your fingers. Okay, let's tie this in on the side of the fly closest to you. Now this positioning is important, and you'll see why later. Make sure the wire extends up to right behind the lead, as this will help with the taper of the fly. And then bring your thread all the way back to the start of the hook bend, ensuring to keep the wire directly on the side of the hook shank, maybe even slightly lower. By the way, I'm sorry for my dirty looking hands. I was planting corn right before filming this video. If the wire gets in your way, grab a hair clip like this and pin it back on your vise. Try to straighten out the wire in any places you see curves. Okay, now we need the tail and body. And for this we'll use pheasant tail. If you have a new tail feather, make sure and strip off all the shorter fibers and fuzzies at the end, as those cannot be used for any fly that I know of. And you know what? I'm going to use this other side first. Okay, so you want to select roughly 6 fibers, and stroke them outward until all the tips are aligned, and then firmly grasp the tips so they stay aligned, and then use your other fingers to rip the fibers off the feather stem. Now let's measure this tail. You'll want roughly a hook shank length tail. Transfer that measurement onto your other hand, and then tie in the tail with a pinch wrap. Make a second wrap and then check the length. If you need to adjust the length, you can pull the butt ends to shorten it. Okay, that looks good to me. Let's make another wrap under the tail to splay those fibers out a bit. And then one more over the tail. And then pull the butt ends back and make a wrap right in front of them. Then bring your thread up to about a bead length space behind the bead. To make this next step easier, let's cut off the frillies at the end of the pheasant tail fibers. Now we want to stroke out the fibers until they're all aligned properly and aren't twisted. This will help flatten them out as well. Now proceed to start wrapping the fibers up the hook shank, keeping the fibers as flat and straight as possible. I find it helps to place your fingers on top of the previous wrap when needing to reposition your other hand after each wrap. Okay, continue wrapping up the hook shank, ensuring to cover the hook shank with the fibers. And there is a natural taper to these fibers, as you can see, and this creates a nice taper to the abdomen of this fly. When you reach your thread, hold the fibers straight up, and then wrap over them with your thread. Make a second wrap over them, and then pull them rearward and wrap in front. Now just cut off the waist close. Okay, now for the wire rib. We will counter wrap this. And this is why it's important to tie this directly on the side of the hook. Otherwise, if you had it on top, you would mess with the tail positioning and move some of those fibers. Counterwrapping is when you wrap the opposite direction. This is going to add more durability to the fly and help to hold those fibers in place better. Try to get these wraps as even as possible, and if you're not happy with the wraps, there's no shame in unwrapping and trying again like I had to here. When you reach your thread, capture it with the multiple wraps over it and then in front. And then X-wrap over a couple times to hold it in tight. Then put your finger over the wire to keep it from moving and helicopter the excess wire off. So we're going to make a couple wraps back a bit over the wire, and then in front near the bead. But end with your thread in between where this wing case will go. Now we need more pheasant tail fibers, but this time about double what you use for the tail. So let's pull off about 12 fibers, ensuring to align these tips. Measure out the tips, which should be about as long as a hook gap width, and you'll get the hang of how long to tie these in after a couple tries. But the length here is very important, and I'll show why later in the video. So tie them in right behind the bead, which will fan them out. Okay, now let's cut off those frillies here as well. Okay, so I messed up, and I'm retying these in. So I pulled too hard and pulled out the tips of the fibers. Okay, so now we're going to want to flatten out the butt end fibers so they tie in more even. Use your thumb to flatten and then hold them directly on top of the hook shank, keeping them flat, and tie them down back to about 1.5 to 2 bead width lengths. This will be your wing case. Okay, you know what? I feel like these tips are just a bit too long. I need to adjust that, so I'm unwinding. And then I'm going to pull the butt ends back slightly to adjust. Okay, there we go. Perfect length here. Okay, I'm flattening and tying back the wing case again. And you can always check to see if that looks right to you. Okay, now we need some peacock herl. Grab 2 strands that are roughly the same length. Then you want to snip off the tips as they can be fragile. Tying the herl back to the start of the wing case, and then make sure the tips aren't past the bead. Now, let's densely wrap the herl up until you reach the bead, covering all the thorax area. Capture the herl with 2 wraps over it and then 1 in front. And then bring your thread back over it again. If you lift up your thread and pull tight on the herl, it should snap off right at your thread, making a clean cut for you. And this always works when not on camera, but never does on camera. I don't know why. If it doesn't work for you, then just clip off the herl as close as you can. Now we're going to push the tips of the pheasant tail rearward and wiggle our fingers to separate about half to one side and the other half to the other side. Sometimes they take a bit more working to get a good split. But when you're happy with the split, then pull the butt ends of the fibers up and over the thorax, splitting those tips in half. And you can see here how keeping the fibers flat really helps with creating that nice wing case. This might take a bit of manipulation to get those legs positioned correctly, but you basically want them fanned out a bit like so. Now with the wing case directly on top and spread out a bit, make 2 wraps over it right behind the bead. And make sure those legs aren't clumped together like they are on my closer side. Okay, I'm going to fix that in a minute. Make another very tight wrap over the wing case fiber. And then pull the butt ends rearward and wrap over it once again with 2 tight wraps. With some fine point scissors, cut off the butt ends as close as you can. Okay, let's whip finish this fly. But ensure that the whip finish ends on top of the fly like so. Okay, let's fix those clumped legs. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, now I will be using 2 different UV resins to finish this fly. First, let's use this Solarez Ultra Thin. It's got a handy paintbrush and the cap for easy application. Just paint a little bit on top of that whip finish and over the wing case. Now it's super thin and will penetrate those thread wraps and wing case. Once cured with your UV light, it will harden everything up and make this super durable. Okay, so this is an optional step, but I like to add this Solarez thin formula as well. And I got this handy precision tip replacement for it, which Solarez sells on their website. Put 1 drop of resin on top of the wing case like so. And I thought I put too much on, so I'm getting a bit off. And I was wrong actually, as I should have left all that on there. Use your bodkin to spread this out properly, and make sure that some extends back slightly onto the top of the abdomen, and then cure with your UV light. Now I want to get a bit more shine on here, so I'm going to add some more of the Ultra Thin, and this would not be necessary if I left that larger drop on there. Anyway, as you can see, this cures without any tackiness and is very quick. Well, there we go. This fly is now finished. Now these pheasant tail nymphs are some of the most popular and effective general purpose nymphs. They can be tied with or without a bead head, and sometime in the near future, I'll try to show how to tie a non-bead head version. While not original to the nymph, I really like adding that resin to the wing case. Not only does it make it look much better, but it also makes this fly much more durable, as the wing case is where I see this fail the most. The pheasant tail fibers are fragile, and the resin will protect them from fish teeth. I would say that these mimic mayfly nymphs or stonefly nymphs depending on the size that you tie them, and even midges if tied super small. In fact, pheasant tail feathers even come in many different colors. Here's a natural one, but behind it is a bleached one to tie a lighter nymph. And they also come dyed in black, olive, and many more colors than I even have here. A really small black one can mimic a midge pupa quite well. Now getting the proportions right are important here. So let me show you what I mean. Here's one I tied with the legs a bit too long. As you can see, it doesn't look too good. And while still fishable, it's not a fly I would pick first out of my box. However, it's still going to go in my box. Here is one with the legs too short. And it also doesn't look very good, but of course also still fishable. By the way, both of these do not have the resin wing case. And you can see how much better that wing case makes the fly look. Now check out last month's series where each week I tied a different type of midge. From simple zebra midge to RS2, WD-40, and bling midge. I will put links below to each one of these videos in the description section of this video if you're interested. As each month I will be making a new series of different types of flies, and here in March I'm tying general purpose nymphs. Next week I will be tying the copper john, so make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any future videos. I'm starting off this new general purpose box with these bead head pheasant tails. I have a long way to go to fill this box, but I'm up to the challenge. By the way, I do sell these fly boxes with free shipping on Amazon. They're super thin and fit in most shirt pockets, or allow you to fit multiple in a chest pack, organizing your box by fly type, like this general purpose nymph box. They're waterproof, which keeps your flies dry until you're ready to fish them so they don't rust. And the silicone back has pre-made slots that hold your flies very secure. And it's also self-healing, which means that if you do poke it, it will not damage the backing like those foam ones do. I will link to my Amazon storefront below in the description section of this video if you're interested. Your purchase helps support this channel and also gets you some great fly boxes. Also, don't forget to check out my sponsor, Resin Fly. They made the hooks I use today, but they also make some of the best fly rods and reels for the money I have ever used. Best off, they're offering you all a discount. So if you're in the market for a new rod or a bunch of hooks or beads, go to www.risenfly.com and type in McFly at checkout and they'll give you 15% off of your first order with them. Okay, well thanks for watching everyone. If you like this video, please do me a favor and hit that like button. I will see you all in the next video. Now you go catch some fish.